Hello, good afternoon. My name's Rachel Holloway. I will be taking you through your afternoon session today. Thank you very much for coming. Before we get started, it would be really helpful if you could just introduce yourselves, and when you do so, to tell me what you know about the subject we're covering today, regulatory impact assessment. If we start with you, please.
My name's Andy, and my knowledge is a bit limited, I would say, so not a great deal.
Okay, not a great deal. Okay, thanks, Andy.
My name's Martin, and I know a little bit about regulatory impact assessments.
Okay, perfect. Thank you very much. So we're going to be 20 minutes today, and there won't be any fire alarms as we're in a household, but if anything happens, such as the phone going off, or if the fire alarm does go off in case there's fire in the kitchen, then just follow me and we'll make our way safely out of premises. Okay, so what we're going to cover today is something called the regulatory impact assessment process. So the purpose of today is to try and improve the quality of what we call RIA. That's the acronym that everyone talks about. And what I would like us to get from today are three learning outcomes. So firstly, for us to explore what regulatory impact assessment is. Secondly, to undertake an impact assessment. And thirdly, to identify one thing that can be applied. So that's the three things that I'd like us to do. Before we move on, is there anything that either of you would like to add to that list?
No, that's fine.
Okay. So what we're going to do is look at what RIA is, and then secondly, how we can produce a quality regulatory impact assessment. And what I will do is support you in the work that we'll do this afternoon. Okay? So at its heart, the regulatory impact assessment process is an analytical framework. Okay? There are 8 main areas that are covered. And Andy, you, for example, said that you didn't really have much knowledge of what RIA is. It is really a simple analytical framework. So you ask 8 questions, and those 8 questions are set out here. So firstly, you look at what is the problem. Secondly, why is change needed? Thirdly, what the outcome is, where do you want to be? Fourthly, options by which to get there. Fifthly, what are the possible impacts of these options? Number 6, the best possible route based on all the evidence. And then 7th, how will, if it's a legislative solution, this be implemented, enforced and monitored? And then lastly, will the benefits justify the costs? So you'll see, for example, there on the right-hand side of the screen, the scales. That's really important because we're trying to quantify, we're trying to understand how much these options are potentially going to cost. And it's a framework that's commonly used by governments. So, for example, in the countries of the OECD, the Organisation for Economic Cooperation and Development, RIA is the commonly used analytical framework within governments. So, for example, when deciding where to build a railway, people will undertake, policy specialists such as myself will undertake a RIA to help inform ministerial political decisions. And we go through these options. And this, in fact, is the definition that the Organisation for Economic Cooperation and Development used. And what I've done here is to highlight in purple some of the aspects that we find are really, really important. So, for example, the fact that it needs to be systemic. It's a tool to critically assess the positive and negative effects of proposed options. And it uses a range of methods. There are many different techniques that can be employed. Some are, for example, cost-benefit based, so the attempt to try and monetize options. Others are much more qualitative in style. They're based on survey, they're based on options. So there is a plethora, a number of different options there. And as I said previously, it's about policy making. So RIA enables governments to help determine which possible course is best. So I'm not going to speak for the whole of our session today. We're coming over to you. And this is a common issue that we all have in our everyday lives. Do you both have mobile phones?
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. And have you had those for a long time? Your current phones?
Yes. Yeah, about 3 years.
About 3 years. Okay. And Martin, you?
Not so long, a few months.
A few months, okay. And for your phones, who makes the decision about which model to buy, when you decide to replace them? Perhaps you have work phones or personal phones?
I made purely that decision on myself, and it's just purely I look at what I need out of the contract, and or do I need to change it? That's one of the questions I ask.
Great, so nice. That's a really good open question to ask. Do I need to change? And Martin, do you have work phone, personal phone?
Mine's a work phone, and work make the decision about what kind of phone I have next. Okay, interesting. So what we're going to do now then is to put ourselves in a hypothetical but a real situation that most of us have, which is looking to decide what we do when our mobile phone contract comes to an end. So the question is how you would decide what to do next. And let me just outline a scenario to you. So there's actually nothing wrong with your phone. They've got a few scratches on the outside, but it still works. But you've decided that you would like a new phone, okay? You've also been using more than your contracted data. So within your contract you have, say, 500 megabytes of data per month to use, and you've been going well above that on a regular basis, and it's been costing you a lot more. So, thinking just as individuals at the moment, my question for you is, what steps do you take in making this decision, and what factors do you consider? So I'd just like you to think about that and write down some of the key factors, and we'll take about 5 minutes for this activity. I'll leave this slide up for you here, and I'm also here if you wanted to ask me any questions. I'm not sure what you mean between the difference between steps and factors.
So, in terms of factors might be around, for example, how much a contract might cost you overall for a year, whether it's a 12-month contract, whether it's a 24-month contract, what's the overall cost. When I ask about steps, I'm interested in what you might do in order to find out that information. So whether, for example, you might do any research and where you might go to do that. Is that any clearer?
Yeah, that's really helpful. Thank you.
Sorry, Rachel, just one last thing. Where it says a few scratches, but you would like one. Is that what you'd like a new one? Is that? Yeah.
How are you both getting on?
Okay, yeah. I'm always on.
Need a little bit longer, or?
No.
No? Okay. Super. Does anyone remember these older model phones?
Very vaguely.
Too well.
I think this one here, the Nokia, was my first ever phone.
Oh no, I definitely had ones with stubby aerials.
Stubby era. Oh, such as these.
Yeah.
But you still got one, haven't you, Martin?
Okay, so let's feedback then. Martin, if we take you first,
Yeah.
what steps did you take?
I think the first step would be trying to think for myself about what was actually important to me, and then probably checking that on the internet in terms of looking at the range of options and functionality of different things, because I'm not really sure about all the different things that would matter to me, so finding out a little bit more about what phones can do. Then I'd probably ask some friends who maybe would have phones like that I could actually see, or go into a shop and have a look in person at what those phones were like. Those sorts of things.
Okay, great. So you do your research by some practical online research, but also going to see perhaps some of the phones in action.
Yeah.
Okay. Andy, is that the sort of thing that you think you would do, or is there anything else that Martin hasn't mentioned that you would add?
Yeah, so obviously step one, I'd probably answer the two questions. I suppose I'd dig up into two columns. I'd have wants, as in desires in an ideal situation, money's not a factor, I can have this, but then on another column, this is what I need. So I'd actually ask, what do I need? So on a wants or desires, brand spanking new phone, scratch free, loads of memory, it's got its diamond encrusted, whatever. But natural needs would be one, looking at the contract, I'd want to get the best possible deal that I could do for the money, and also for myself personally, will it work will actually get the coverage on that particular network where I want it to work, and is the phone is another phone going to be more robust, i.e. it's not going to get damaged by wetness, I can drop it off out of pockets and all sorts. So that'd be like my needs. So the steps, in terms of Martin, I'll do my research. So I'd actually speak to my current mobile provider and see what deal they could do. I'd look up reviews on new phones and see what new phones are doing. Other things I'd look up on do my research, actually can look up on the mobile phone cover for certain networks. There's actually a number of maps that you can actually look at for mobile cover. And obviously, if I choose to keep my new phone, so I keep my current phone, I'd actually be looking at other ways to actually protect my current phone. Could I say put a new case on it to actually make it look better, screen protector, or is it insured? Could I send it off to get repaired, as opposed to forking out on a new thing? So I think it's definitely asking, probably thinking about sort of 3 or 4 different options and then weighing it up. So that's probably what I'll do personally.
Okay, that's great. Lots of detail consideration there. And you've talked a lot about, it seems like your needs might be a little bit different from Martin's in terms of things needing to be water resistant.
Yes, so a robust phone that's not going to die is more better than the top, like say a top model that's made out of crystal.
Yeah, you see a lot of those fancy phones about nowadays. Thank you. That's a really useful activity, and I think get a sense of your different priorities, and it's a tool. This sort of approach is a tool that we actually already use in our everyday lives. So I just wanted to share with you then. So I've run this activity a number of times in a number of different countries, and these are the 4 options which people, having run through this full activity, I would normally spend an hour doing this and we'd break over coffee, but these are the 4 options that most people decide. So the first is keeping the phone and extending the contract. So as Andy has said, to call up the provider and see what option, what cover they can give you. Perhaps they'll offer you a better deal. Secondly, keeping your phone but moving it to a pay-as-you-go contract. Thirdly, buying a new phone but not having a contract, so giving you options perhaps in different countries. And Andy's talked a small bit about that. And then lastly, perhaps a new phone and a new contract. But as you've both very well said, it's about determining what is it that you actually need and also working out what is it that you actually want. Where are the distinctions and where will you settle? What option will you go for? And so the two of you have actually completed a fairly robust and initial regulatory impact assessment process, because you've gone through, if you remember those 8 steps that we had here, you've asked, I've presented you with the issue about the phone. In fact, it's got a number of scratches on, and given you some input that you think you'd like a new phone, not necessarily that you need it, and you've run through all of these options. And then perhaps you can see that if we had longer, what we would do is go into these in more detail. So what is the possible impact of the options? What's the best route available in the evidence? You've talked very well about where you would source that information and evidence from. So thank you very much. What we've done in our short time together is covered the regulatory impact assessment process and how you produce an initial one. And I've got a question finally for you. Is there anything that you've learnt today and one aspect that you would apply to your own life?
I think the trick is, it's just to sort of take a step back and review the whole, have a look at the whole situation, look at all your different options and work your way through, just work your way through it.
Okay, I like that, taking a step back. And actually in